Welcome to this week's edition of Taiwan Outlook. I'm your host, Chi-Chen Lo. The novel, The Lord of the Rings, is one of the best sellers in decades, and millions of copies of the novel have been sold all over the world. And the movie itself is also one of the most selling box offices. But most people enjoy reading and viewing the novel with the help of translation. In today's program, we are very happy to invite one of the translators of the Chinese edition of The Lord of the Rings to come to our program. He will be sharing with us his interesting part and the most difficult part in doing the translation. Let's welcome Lucifer Chu. Mr. Welcome to our program.
Good day, and good day, everyone.
So tell us, how long does it take for you to do the translation for the novel?
Actually, I only have 9 months to finish everything because, after I signed a contract with the publisher, I only got 9 months left from the premiere of the movie. So this 9 months is the only thing I can get.
So when you get the contract, you have to do the translation within 9 months.
9 months, and
how do you feel about it?
Wow, you feel lucky. At the same time, but it feels sometimes, it's amazing if you can finish the whole work. Because I know the Japanese translation of Lord of the Rings, the translator spent like 10 years to finish the whole thing. So I feel, I'm lucky to get the job, but I'm not that lucky to finish that.
So they went to you first, or you talked to the publishers?
Well, everyone is thinking that, okay, this is such a great job. You got to have a lot of competitors at that time. But actually, because it's such a fabulous work, it's really difficult to translate. So actually, I don't have any competitors at that time.
That's right.
The only competitor is myself. I have to prove to the publisher that why someone who got a degree in electrical engineering, who would like to translate the work into Chinese, and also he wants to prove that it should be a better translation compared to the last one. Actually, in 1997, there's already an older version of the translation in the market, and it's not very successful. So I have to, sort of prove myself that I'm able to take the work.
How did you prove yourself to the publishers?
Well, actually, I just sent them a box of all the translated books I've done for the past 10 years. I started translation during my college times. I finished like 20 fantasy novels, and I'm the only one in Taiwan who finished that much translation at that time. So they said, okay, maybe you are qualified as a translator, but to translate Lord of the Rings, you got to be kidding me. So I have to put some extra thing into the proposal. Actually, I made a proposal. It's like a total solution.
That's right.
I write a draft of how you are going to market this, and what I'm going to help you, and how to design the cover, and who you are going to collaborate with.
You not just translate it, but also do the whole thing, package thing.
Yeah, I kind of provide the whole solution. And not only that, not only I provide the idea of how to market that, I also put the very interesting thing into the contract, that I guarantee each of the book will be sold over 10,000 sets, or I won't get any royalty from that.
And eventually, how many copies do you get?
Well, I'm kind of lucky. It's kind of pretty close to 1 million copies.
Chinese edition of it.
Yep.
And there are so many characters in the story.
Yes.
How do you understand, the characters?
Well,
it's very complicated.
Yes, but I have to say everything. Well, you have to do everything from your passion, because I love the work. Because I think it's one of the best work ever done. The only reason I want to sign a contract with the publisher is not because I think I will make money or become famous because of that. Because it was kind of desperate. At that time, because nobody knows about Lord of the Rings, and you are not sure about the quality of the movie. The only reason I want to do that is because I want to tell my grandson that your grandfather done the translation of Lord of the Rings.
But you say that your major is double E, electronics engineering. How do you get into this kind of translation business?
Well, it's relatively a long story, but let me make it short. I play a lot of computer games, and eventually all the computer games came from fantasy novels, and all the fantasy novels came from Lord of the Rings. So it's the origin of everything. So that means I have to trace all the way back to the origin of everything. So it's the origin of all my life, I guess. I should say so.
But enjoying the game is one thing, translating the stories is another thing. How do you prove yourself that you will be able to do the translation?
Okay, I should put it that way because, well, at my time, reading fantasy novel, playing computer game is such a lonely thing. There's so few people out there who are doing the same thing. For example, in 1997, I tried to tell people that I love Lord of the Rings, but most of the people out there will say, "What's that? I've never heard of it." So it's kind of relatively lonely. So the other motivation for me is I want to have more friends who enjoy the same thing like me. So the biggest motivation, I should say, is that I would like to have more and more people love Lord of the Rings. So I have to do my job. I have to do my best to finish that.
Yeah, but reading it is one thing, but doing the translation, sometimes there are, tough things in doing the translation. What's the most difficult part in doing the translation?
The culture is different. For example, they got a lot of the elves and mythologies in there, but for people in Taiwan, we do not understand the culture. You got to put a lot of footnotes, a lot of explanation to help people to get into that mythology setting. But for the foreign readers, most of them are from Western culture. They kind of understand everything. So it's more like if you try to put the kind of, for example, what should I call, a lot of the Chinese mythology to explain what's that and why people know about Qing Gong, how they do things with Nei Gong. That's almost impossible.
That's right. So does the movie itself help the novel?
Of course. It's did a lot of efforts to help me to visualize everything. For example, the translation of Balrog, it means nothing. Actually, the name means nothing. But if you translate that into English, it means flame devil. But before they actually put it into the movie, you did not know what it looks like.
That's right.
But after they finish that and put it into a movie, you can get a sneak peek view of what's in there, and you'll know, okay, then I'll just translate from the English name of flame devil, like into Chinese called Yan Mo. That would be easier for people to understand.
But as you said, that there are cultural differences between the movie itself and local culture here.
Yes.
And when you do the translation, there are new terminologies that you cannot find appropriate Chinese words to translate.
Yes.
So you create these new vocabularies?
Yeah, you got to do that because, well, for example, even the Elvish, it sounds translatable. The reason why Tolkien, the writer, put it there is to make you feel like it's from the distant world. So it's got a totally different language. So for me, I can only put it into I can put pronunciations there. If the Elvish means Norling, it means run fast. But I cannot translate that into English because when I translate that into English and into Chinese, it'll be weird. You'll be reading plain Chinese instead of foreign language. So some of those things are not translatable. But the other things, you got to visualize them, then reconstruct them into your own culture to help people to understand.
In comparison with your previous works, other fantasy novels and so on. What's the major difference between these two?
Wow, it's one of the masterpieces in 20th century, and you got a lot of burdens on you because you are translating something people do not have the courage to challenge for maybe for 50 years. And I'm a guy who play a lot of computer games, but I'm only that. I'm not a professor. I'm not the expert in the Western culture. I'm just someone who really, really loves the work. So the biggest difference is the burden is so heavy that I want to give up for a lot of times during that 9 months.
How about sequels? Thinking about the lowering sequels.
Well, the challenge will be not only the sequels, but the movie. The quality of the movie itself is not. We are not sure about that because Peter Jackson was not well known at that time. He only got several movies which is pretty bad taste and a lot of horror movies. So you're only saying, okay, this guy comes from New Zealand and nobody knows about him. And if the movie goes down, the book will go down. So that's just like Titanic. Titanic goes very well, then the book sells. But if Titanic goes down and the book, well, plop.
Have you ever been to New Zealand to feel,
Yes, actually, the Return of the King, the third movie, I went there to join the world premiere. And it's very interesting that their president, the female president, actually joined the worldwide premiere to announce that, okay, this is the pride of our country because we support it so much, and the talent all came from New Zealand. The director is Peter Jackson. He's a New Zealander. He's a Kiwi, I should put it that. And the whole special effects, they put it in there. So after Lord of the Rings, a lot of the movies like that Samurai and the Narnia series and King Kong are all done in New Zealand. So it's kind of changed the whole country.
So eventually, how many months do you use to finish the translation?
I spent actually less than 9 months.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I finished because you need to do a proofreading kind of thing.
That's
you need to do the whole editing. You need to draw the map and a lot of things. So I finished like 6 to 7 months. And lost like 20 kilograms during that time. Wow, it's a tough job.
And looking back, when you did the translation, what's the most interesting part, of the process?
Well, the biggest challenge would be that, okay, for a reader, like you and like all the audience, when we're reading something, when it's boring, we just flip through. But as a translator, there's no way you're going to flip through, right? You got to translate everything. Yeah. So that's the most difficult part. So I kind of I almost hate all those singing and point reading kind of thing because it's so slow and you don't have the tempo to do that. But after they get into the war zone, everybody's fighting and it's kind of desperate, you kind of like you join the crowd and you'll translate everything faster because you want to see the next chapter.
Yeah. And people compare the difference between the so-called visualizing the novel.
Yes.
It's good to read because you can use your imagination. But when you see the movie, the producer or the visualize everything, director, visualize everything. How do you feel the difference?
Well, I should say they've done a pretty good job because just like what you said, is that we all got our own version of Lord of the Rings. Yeah. Because I visualize Gandalf as someone like other people, like maybe not Ian McKellen, but another handsome old guy. But when they put Ian McKellen into the character, you kind of believe in that. So actually, adopting works from original text is very difficult, but Peter Jackson is really doing a good job. He finds the balance between our imagination and his imagination. So all the works came in the middle of everything. So even the most critic people of like the fanatics of Lord of the Rings, they'll kind of enjoy that because they bring more and more fans for Lord of the Rings. Yeah. So it's very good.
As we said earlier, that the novel is one of the best sellers in recent decades. And every big seller or a bestseller always has some impact on the society, on the world. What do you think about the social impact of the novel?
Well, I should say, if you're talking about Taiwan, the biggest impact is that after Lord of the Rings, people start to really read fantasy novels as a genre. Because after Harry Potter, they think, okay, it's for kids. It's just something for kids, young kids to learn English. But after Lord of the Rings, it's a very serious cultural impact. People thinking that, okay, finally, fantasy genre is something you respect. It's a very huge genre and it represents something we've never encountered before. So people start to read fantasy genre and they start to write their own fantasy.
That's right. And also some people go to New Zealand,
Yes, there's a travel agency called Red Carpet. They will arrange you everything to enjoy the whole experience. So actually I'm waiting for the next prequel, The Hobbit. It will be shoot in 2009 and it will be in theater in 2010.
Yeah. So you think there's an expanding market for the fantasy novels in Taiwan?
Actually, it's a very big market for imagination and creativity. So I think if our government or people in Taiwan can catch the trend, there will be very, very big chance for us to really join the main culture.
And in the local market, do you find any competitive fantasy novel writers?
Well, it's very difficult to say so because there's a pretty interesting comparison between Jin Yong and Tolkien. Because after Tolkien, there's tons of new writers writing new different things and joining the fantasy genre. But after Jin Yong, the genre is dying down. Nobody's saying that, okay, I'm not going to best Jin Yong, so I'm not going to write anything. Yeah. So actually, we only have like 5 years after the whole sequel of Lord of the Rings finished. So people will start trying to catch up. Because after Lord of the Rings, in Western culture, they got like 50 years, half a century to catch up. We only got 5 years, so I'm still waiting for that.
We know that you also established your own fantasy foundation.
Yes.
So when we come back, we'll talk about your fantasy foundation, because it looks very fancy.
Well...
So let's take a short break.
Sure.
And we'll be back after these messages.